Need to unmute. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody could hear me well. Um, First of all, I want to say thanks for inviting me and for showing up to be a part of this conversation. I know anybody asked me to talk about transitions and what it means, and a lot of it makes me feel like I'm talking about myself for 45 minutes. So I will share some stories and some experiences, and then again, really invite everybody to ask questions, and if there's anything specific that you want to hear about or that you might be interested in, and I have had an experience with it, I'd be more than happy to share. Um, I think where I would start is kind of how I got started and what did the thought of or the idea of transitioning in the ballroom dance world means to me personally, and it it will get a little bit um, from the beginning and all the way through. So for those of you who don't know, I started in Barbados with Livy and Betty Allen Ballroom Dance Center. And I actually started with them because I was kicked out of a class at Lodge School and ended up having to take Annie Betty's ballroom class because they pretty much told me that I had to. Principal was like, this is the only option that you got. So that's where I ended up. And I obviously started to enjoy it right away from the get-go. Well, maybe that's a lie. Maybe not right away, but eventually I started to really enjoy it. Annie Betty then invited me to come to Livy and Betty Dance Center, where I got to know a lot more about what ballroom dancing was, and more so than ballroom dancing, I got planted into a community of people that really were supportive, and two leaders that were very keen on making sure that us as kids had a place to be and had a belonging. So my first transition was really finding a community that I would have never known existed and being able to find a home in that community. And if I kind of skip to where I am now as a studio owner in the United States of America, that is the one thing that I keep kind of top of my brain, and is the mantra of owning a studio. What is the point of this studio? What is the point of Kemar Bennett owning Fred Astaire Dance Studio? And the point was, or still is rather, that as a young Black immigrant from a third world country, I had this grand opportunity that started as a punishment. I started by being disciplined, if you will, and being forced into this situation that brought me to a community that opened my eyes to a whole different world, a world that, again, would never had thought existed. And throughout the process, it was figuring out what next, why this, why not that, and all of these things. So grow up dancing in Barbados, you know, I know a lot of you have seen me competing in Barbados as a youth, as a junior, and then as a baby adult. And then deciding, you know, when I was ready to graduate school and I was ready to leave Lodge, you know, I made that a huge mistake, not a tiny one. I made a huge mistake, and anybody will probably still yell at me for it today. But I made the mistake of, one, not applying to community college or university. because I had it in my head that I was going to go back to lodge, to sixth form, because in that time, yes, I was dancing, and yes, I loved dancing, but I was still playing track and field. I was still running track and field and playing volleyball. And my head was saying, yeah, these two things will get me to that next place. These two things will get me into another college, or get me in the US or into England, or whatever the case might be. And I decided that I wasn't going to apply for community college or university, because sixth form was gladly going to open its arms and take me. And then that didn't happen. The deputy principal called and said, well, Bennett, your results come back and you got 7 CXCs, but the 7 of them don't make sense. So there's no program at law school for you. So then I had to scramble. What next? You know, that dream literally just sunk, and there was no saving it. They were not budging. They were not folding, nothing. It was, this thing that happened. So I had to figure out what next. Another transition. This thing I wanted to do isn't going to happen. So what do I do now? And that's when I lean on my support system that I am always very grateful for. And anybody, you know, went to the BCC office with me, and we sat down with the president of BCC, and this man at the point looked at me and was just like, well, you obviously are a delinquent, so why should I let you in the school? And at that point, my thought was, yeah, why should you? You know, because I was completely defeated. And anybody, you know, we all know anybody, so, you know, she gave her sweet words, and he listened more and more and more, and he said, okay, I'll give you this opportunity. And I ended up in BCC. Kind of fast forward, BCC did an accounting and economics program that I loved most of my teachers, especially Margaret Scott Thompson, if you are here. But it just wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't something that I went to school every day feeling like, yeah, I like this. I really want to do this thing. I literally got through the program because the only way that I could play on the volleyball team at BCC was to have a certain GPA. And because the ballroom program was also placed into BCC at that point. So 2 of my electives was Ballroom 1 and Ballroom 2. And I was able to do that, and that helped get me through BCC. But when I get to the end of that, I was at that place again of what next? I am about to graduate BCC, and I still don't have a sense of belonging or feeling like this is something that I want to do. So I decided, well, more my mother did than I did, decided that she would give my uncle a call and see if there was anywhere for me to get into a school in the United States. Thought it was a long shot, but it somehow happened, and I ended up in a community college here in the US in 2010. And when I moved here, I got into a theater arts program. So it was pretty much theater arts as the full course and dance as a minor. And I felt like there was something that I needed to connect to while I was here for me to make this venture enjoyable somehow. Because again, I still didn't know. I still was uncertain. I still was questioning, okay, I can do this degree, but then what next? What am I going to end up doing? Why am I doing this? Where is this taking me? All these questions I still had playing through my head over and over and over again. So I went to Bunker Hill, and in my first semester at Bunker Hill, I was told about this ballroom dance program at Harvard University, where pretty much meant that you could go to Harvard to do tryouts with different amateur partners. And if you ended up partnering with one of the dancers from Harvard, you pretty much got a spot on this Harvard ballroom team. So I said, okay, I'll try it. So went to Harvard, did the tryout, actually connected with this one girl, and we decided we were going to compete on the amateur collegiate circuit in Gold Latin. And at that time, I knew jack squat what American rhythm was or American style. I had no clue what it was whatsoever, but she said, yeah, you'll be good at this, so we should do this too. And I said, okay, fine. I am clueless, let me do it. So I danced with her for a semester on the Harvard team and realized that as I was doing this, I was finding a little bit more purpose. And the purpose was more getting to be, again, a part of that community, that ballroom dance community. Yes, it was the Harvard dance team, but it was more the people in that community that was enjoyable to be around. And I felt like I was doing something that my heart felt good about. I felt like I was finding a passion in that position. And one semester, I feel like maybe it was second semester, we went to Harvard Invitational. Harvard was hosting their own competition. And I walked in the building and I thought to myself, this girl looked real familiar. And I just like couldn't really see who it was from the distance because my school was on one side and her school was on the other side. And probably like an hour later, we got really, really close to each other. And then I realized it was Shale. If you guys don't know, Shale is Derek's daughter, who I competed with we competed together for about 3 years, both here and at home in Barbados. So long story short, Shale and I saw each other, realized, well, there's two of us here. We live an hour and a half apart. So it didn't really make sense to dance together because it meant that practice was going to be limited. We couldn't actually commit to a full-time schedule because, again, we live an hour and a half apart. Neither of us drive, so it meant figuring out taking a train or a bus or something like that. So in comes Annie Betty again, who I will call my savior from any day. Annie Betty got on the phone with both Shale and I and said, but guys, I don't understand how it is that the two of y'all in the same state, you're close together, but you ain't gonna dance with each other. I don't understand, guys. You gotta explain it. So there was not pressure, but pressure to try something out of the blue, out of the random, figure it out somehow or another. So in figuring out how to dance with Shale and Shale figuring out how to dance with me, we kind of both but another transition, which was more of a mental transition. Do I want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to take a train for an hour and a half, to practice with somebody for an hour and a half, to take a train back for an hour and a half, and then go to school for 8 hours to be wiped out for the rest of the night? And it was a decision that you had to make. Should I not? Why would I do this thing? Or what will I do if I don't do this thing? So we decided to do it. And yes, it was very, very stressful in the beginning because I got lost countless times trying to get to Worcester. She got lost countless times trying to get to Boston. But eventually we got on a cycle that it worked and it was happening. So we danced together here for a solid 2.5 years. And that's really when the idea of ballroom dancing full time really stuck into my brain and really became a reality, or it became less of a dream and more of an option that this thing is possible. So throughout competing together, we won a few titles on the collegiate circuit. We won a few titles on the amateur New England Northeastern circuit. And when we were done, Shale graduated 1 semester before I did. So when Shale graduated, I pretty much just found a partner at Boston University, and we danced for a semester. And as I was about to graduate, I was at that roadblock again that I was at 3 times before. What next? What do I do now? I'm on a F1 visa, which means that I only have 1 year left in the US to figure something out. If not, I need to go back home and try something else, try to do something else. Because obviously, again, I don't know what it is that I could do. That is when I was approached by a former teammate of mine, this guy named Renzo, who came to me and said, listen, I'm opening a dance studio in Dedham, which is like 20 minutes away from the city. And I'm looking for teachers. Would you consider teaching for my studio? And the first thing that went through my head was, I ain't certified to teach. I can't teach my left foot from my right foot to anybody. Like, no, I don't think that that's something going to work. So my initial response was to shut it down. And then he approached me again and pretty much showed me this massive layout that at first my head went, okay, this is just pure rubbish. You just want somebody to work for you. So this is what you're selling me right now. And I thought, okay, well, I am running out of time and I don't know what I'm going to do next. My visa is about to expire and I have this opportunity to teach things that I don't know because I still don't know American style. So I still clueless as to what I'm supposed to be teaching. What do I do? Do I go left? Do I go right? What? So I decided, again, with some very clear advice from anybody, that I should take the opportunity. I should take the job and see what it was all about. I had a year, they would sponsor the visa, and if it worked, then they would renew it for 3 years. If it didn't work, then I'd be back at that wall of what next? What do I do again? So I took the opportunity, and that's when I really got the massive eye-opener as to ballroom dancing around the world. And it wasn't just here in Boston, it wasn't just here in Massachusetts, it wasn't just here in the US, it was right away you drop in the middle of this thing that's like, okay, now here is the rest of ballroom dancing around the world. And my initial thought was, wow, I am so not ready for any of this. I am so unprepared for all of this, and I am literally just going to sink and probably quit this in a couple of months, if I survive a couple of months. And we got to a place where, as an instructor, you have to do all these certifications. So I worked for 2-3 months and then started to prep for my exams. And believe it or not, as we started to prep for my exams, was the place that I felt most secure and most calm, because I'm going to be a little bit blunt right now. A lot of the other teachers that were prepping for these exams, and some of these teachers had been teaching for a year or two before I started teaching, did not know how to read the book. They did not know what any of the terminology in the book meant whatsoever. And I started to get a confidence boost because of having to do medal testing every single year as a junior and as a youth and as a baby adult. I actually knew what I was looking at. I actually knew what I was reading. So it gave me a feeling of you actually might belong here. You actually might know what you're getting yourself into. You actually might be able to do this thing and be successful at this thing. And we prepared for the exam, and all the things that you could imagine that you need to know about a dance or a particular step or a particular pattern, you had to memorize, you know? left foot forward, diagonal wall, body turns left, understand what rise and fall meant, understanding the sway, understanding the swing, all these things you had to know pretty much for every exam. And for me, some of the information was very, very new. I had never thought about it, or I had never seen it in that format before. But it was actually easy because I had been in those situations before so many times. It was easy for me to interpret it or to take the information in. And I would say I credit 100% of that to having to do metal testing, because you had the preparation of doing this material and the preparation for having an examiner sitting in front of you, expecting you to perform all of these things. And the exams are, I don't want to say hard, but it's almost like they're written for you to really have to know and understand every single thing that you're saying, because the examiner will question every single portion of it, and every single step that you take wrong, you need to explain what it is and what it was and stuff like that. So being in the position of having to prepare for the exams, then not necessarily put me at that wall again, but it put me in that headspace again. Well, okay, this is one that I have to do, you know, what next? What happens after this one? What am I going to do? After I do this one exam, I continue teaching, then what? So fast forwarding a little bit, I taught in the Fred Astaire studio in Dedham for a solid 5 years, kept doing my exams, getting my certifications and stuff like that. And then around just before the 5-year mark, I started to hit a wall again. It's like, okay, I'm just teaching in this business for this person again and again, day in, day out. It's the same thing. What next? I started to feel not necessarily empty or passionless, but burnt out. It was like, okay, the repetition of it started to become draining. And that was because I did all these exams and I'm doing all this teaching, but something else was missing. Something was not there. And I decided that I was going to leave that studio and just kind of go teach independently on my own. And it was at that point that I realized what was missing was actually that sense of community. And yes, I was working with other people. Yes, I was teaching other people. Yes, there were other teachers in the studio, but it wasn't a community. It wasn't the thing that I actually started to like about ballroom dancing in general that was happening. It was just like making coffee at Starbucks kind of situation to me in my head. Just like you go in, you do it, and that was it. There was no anything. When I left and went to an independent studio to teach pretty much just for myself, I realized that even in that situation, I'm still hitting that place of, well, okay, what next? What is happening? You don't have that community that you really want or that you are missing. So what do you do? And that's when the venture of becoming a studio owner came about. I always said for the 5 years that I taught in Fred Astaire, I don't want to own a studio. I never want to own a studio because it's too much work. And then when I left and I was teaching independently, I had a little bit of a different experience in a different studio where, yes, they had a little bit more of a community, but then I realized that the community that was created in that space that I was now at and the community that was missing in the space that I just left was all because of who was running it and who was in charge. And it was not necessarily the owners, but the managers or whatever the case might be in the two studios. So I had been approached several times by one of the owners of Fred Astaire National Company about becoming a studio owner or about coming back and managing a studio in a different location. And I had shut them down. I said, no, I don't really want to do it, because in my head, that was all I had. And then I was approached again. And then at that point, I thought, well, I started ballroom dancing as a punishment, and I fell in love with it because of the community. I found the community in ballroom dancing throughout my childhood, and then I found the community in ballroom dancing when I moved to the USA. Pretty much friendless. I had an uncles, but like very limited family. And then I got to an unhappy place again because my community was gone. So why not take the opportunity to provide a community for yourself and for other people as well? So I said, sure, to the adventure. And obviously the adventure meant that I couldn't do it in 2 weeks because there's money involved, and anything when it comes to finances, you got to figure that out first. So I decided save and save and save as much as I can and try this thing. And super fast forwarding to where I am today and owning the studio that I own now. In February of 2020, we were pretty much studio shopping. So looking for locations and negotiating leases and things like that. And then of course, Corona hit, world shut down, everything done, everything can't function. So again, in that place where it's like, oh, shoot, this thing that I thought was possible was going to give me some sense of belonging or happiness or whatever, again, has just been yanked from underneath me with this coronavirus. So it was a feeling of a dream deferred, even though it wasn't a dream from the beginning, but it was more of a goal that I didn't know I had. And the first 3 months of COVID, I was teaching virtually, learning new skills, obviously trying to navigate a computer and teach ballroom lessons. And you really figure out that not only do normal people don't know their left from their right, even us as dancers, we don't know our left from our right, and having to really hone in on a different set of skills. The same director from Fred Astaire reached out to me again, and this is now late May, and we've been shut down for several months because of Corona. And she said, you know, we have this studio who the owner pretty much was already ready to leave before Corona happened, and now they don't have somebody to run the studio, but it looks like the city and the state will open up in a month or so. Would you be interested in doing it? And obviously my first thought was no, because we just realized that the world can shut down at any second. Why would I go put myself in a situation like that, that when the world shut down again, I am kind of screwed with having own a business that I now have to figure out paying staff and all these other things. And then she said the one interesting thing, which is the real side of it, is that what I was going to be paying to start a studio from scratch has now been cut in half because the space already existed, the franchise fees were already paid for, the materials within the space was already there. So there's a huge portion of the cost that I didn't have to cover because somebody else was pretty much done. And they really just wanted to get whatever money they are owed and leave and nothing more. So I said yes. why not? Try it, figure it out. And I would say it's been officially a year now, and it's been a great journey, because the biggest thing that I was missing, I now have again. And I now have the ability to control it, and I have the ability to stir it in whatever direction I want to stir it in, and share it with other people, and do for somebody else, hopefully someday, what so many people has done for me along this way, starting with Anybody and Uncle Libby. So I guess that long story short is to say the transition process was almost like a roadblock after a roadblock after a roadblock. But sitting where I sit now, I noticed that the roadblocks that I've been hitting were always almost mostly mental than anything else. And it was God's hand on one side pushing me towards something that he had a plan for me. And on the other side, something in my brain saying, nah, that ain't gonna work. Nah, that ain't for you. Nah, you ain't ready for this. And having to trust other people that trust in you to say, okay, I can do this, I got this, and something is supporting me on the other side, because something is constantly pushing me in this direction. And I'm grateful for it. Yeah, that is pretty much the end of my spiel of where I started to where I am now, and the journey and what it felt like. So I will let people ask questions now, if you are not all talked out.
Good night, Kemar. I thought it was a very, very interesting lecture. And it's interesting that you use the term roadblock. As a youngster, I could understand, and I am one of those people who would look up to Betty, Livy, and Leon Graves in terms of the drive that they have to get where they are now. But when you look at the three people I call in terms of age, and we see a wide disparity there. And that's why it's interesting that when, even though your ambition, how I would put it, even though you got into it by clean and jerk, it wasn't supposed to happen. According to you, it was supposed to happen. And that's why I think that even we know as teachers should start looking. I always find that some of the more educated people can't afford that thing. It is the rest that I think that we should start reaching out to. So when you started to say, but you can share now in your community and bring me back now to where I started at the YMCA, which is supposed to be a community-based organization. And it kind of tickled me to see what I can do to see if we can incorporate, if we shouldn't incorporate some of those not so good young people and try to direct them. Just like you had a vision, well, you had a vision, even though you did not realize it at that time. It got channeled because of Livy and Betty, and then you still will. You still have a will to do and try to do what next. That is a good way to go ahead. What next? And what you can think and feel what next, that we may want to try. So, audience, we're going to open up the forum to any questions that you may have for Kemar at this time.
Kemar, I really enjoyed your journey. Let's put it that way. The journey is now beginning. 10 years, 20 years from now, we will have a much wider and hopefully more successful journey. But when we get challenges, you know, that is another incentive to move on and do better. Most people that I know never know what they want to do. They finish their A-levels and have no clue. But it was always a puzzle to me. I knew what I wanted to do at 8 years old, even though people made fun of it. So you doctor, you must be crazy. Anyways, but once you're focused and put in the work, and you've had experiences here in Barbados, so, you know, we are a small island, everybody knows everybody. To get that feel in a foreign place, you know, is probably, you know, that might be the thing that will attract people to you. What you said you did at community college? What subjects?
I did a theater arts at Bunker Hill here or at BCC?
Here. BCC.
I did accounts and econ.
And did that help you know in your project? You know, I always say that no knowledge is wasted. And that thing that you hated has now put you in a much better position to manage your business.
You are so right. You are so right. Yeah, you are so right. So right, Dr. Raymond. It's funny that I would have never ever thought about that, but you are so right. That some of the things in running a business, obviously you've got to manage every single aspect of it. The money coming in, the money going out, and all of these things. And it had not for that education, I probably would not been able to even save to get to this point. So you are very
thing right. Is, without that background, which you didn't like, you'll probably be able to teach dancing. Probably successful as a dance teacher, but then the business will give you headaches and all sorts of, you know, stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing is the transition from the British system to the American system. How was that?
Good question. So the transition from one to the other was not as difficult as it was confusing. The difficulty level was not there because good quality technique, when we're talking strictly dancing, is good quality technique no matter what. So the foot action, the leg action, the hip action, the rib cage action, the torso action, everything is what it is, and there's nothing that can change. What was confusing is the first transition of understanding what happens in what order. So a basic example is international Latin. When you move in a walk, the leg is straight, and the leg is straight immediately, and you transfer the weight onto a straight leg. When you move in American rumba, the leg is actually bent, so the knee is soft, and you transfer the weight onto a soft knee, but then you still got to get to a straight leg. You still got to get the hip over the leg. You still got to get the rib cage rotate over the leg. So really understanding the difference between the two at first was confusing. And what didn't help the confusion was being at competitions where you would see the international division and the American division, and then you see some of the dancers and you're just like, I have no clue who was dancing what. Because like me, a lot of people came from overseas. A lot of people that teach here mostly come out of European countries, Russia, Ukraine, etc. And most of them are trained in the international style. But we are transitioned immediately into teaching the American style because that is the more popular, more social style. So when you are on the floor or you see them on the floor, you could see lots of what we call Latin leg actions happening, and trying to learn it in the beginning was just like, well, I don't really know what is left from right. Again, same situation within getting training and getting coaching. Coach A from Russia would tell me, okay, when you step here, this leg needs to go straight immediately. Coach B from America, born and raised, grew up doing American rhythm will say, well, no, that's not right. You need to have a soft knee. And these are two people who world champions in their rights, you know, and they're telling me information that's supposed to better my dancing, and they're telling me about this same dance, but two different pieces of information. So my brain is going, okay, so you want me to do this and you want me to do this, and I don't know which one is right or not. So eventually what you figure out is, and I'm gonna just say it, what you figure out is how to play the politics of a competitive dancer. A wants this and B wants this, but you are only one human being. So you got to figure out, who do you please? Do you please A because he's going to judge you more often? Or do you please B because he's going to judge you more often? Or do you please B because he's got friends that will judge you more often? It goes all the way into that kind of psychology when you're deciding which one you do, until you reach a place where you just say, you know what? Now I understand. Where A is coming from is his background. Where B is coming from is his background. Where me as party C should still hold on to my background. So figuring out what works best on my body for me to produce any kind of movement, and sharing that with my students.
The other thing is, what is there a market for international style dance ballroom?
Yeah. So the two styles used to be conflicting, and I would say even when I first started here, it was that battle, you know, which one is better, which one is right, which one looks better, and things like that. And I think that what is happening now is that people, or the powers that be, are realizing that one style strengthens another. Because when you see a good international Latin champion, you look at like Ricardo and Yulia, who were champions for many, many years, and you see their dancing, you don't see robots. They don't look robotic. They don't look just straight and stiff. And then when you see really good American rhythm dancers like Emmanuel and Liana, who were champions for a long time, you don't just see wild wiggles that everything is just moving. There's control through the leg, through the body, and all these different things. And we're finding now much more that we can share that information with students and be very clear about how one thing will really help strengthen the other thing, irregardless to which you decide to compete in or to perform in. So most students will, you encourage them to use the Latin training in the rhythm and the rhythmical training in the Latin. So the market for both of them has now leveled out, where the American style was a lot higher here than the international was. Now they've definitely evened out a lot more.
But what I was thinking about is that if you were teaching the international style, you might have a bigger market than if you were, because many people might not be teaching that. So so if you offered both, you might have that little edge to bring people into the studio.
So yeah, there's that piece of it, but here, believe it or not, is actually the flip, because the teachers that are coming into the market here in US, they are coming with international training. So the only way that you can get them to work right away is to have them teach Latin. So there's actually a lot more international Latin teachers here than there are American style teachers, because the training process is a little bit slower, and most of them are having that same what the hell is this experience that I had when I first started to learn it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, Louis
Any other questions?
Kemar? Yeah, tell me.
Yes, Louis.
You started the studio in the middle of COVID. So what, you had was teaching virtual classes or in-person classes? How was that for you in terms of business-wise and practical and teaching-wise?
So we started as virtual, with virtual classes, and because of when I started, or when I took over this studio, restrictions here in Boston specifically were getting lifted, so you were capable of doing things in person again. So when we started in-person lessons, we started with non-touch lessons. So everybody was masked and everybody kept their distance, and we pretty much went over technical concepts, we went over patterns and routines, but non-touch in private lesson forms. And eventually things like CDC guidelines changed again. So when we went to touch lessons or contact lessons, we were wearing masks and gloves. So now we are in a place where we have a mixture. So there's people in the studio who's not even, because pretty much everybody here is vaccinated, but some people still choose to wear a mask while they're dancing and stuff like that. The thought of the financial hit, we thought, okay, this is going to be really slow in the beginning because, again, we're in the middle of COVID. But what we learned is that people love to dance, and dancing is one of the things that they want to do. They don't want to have to live without it. So figuring out how to do virtual lessons, figuring out how to join virtual group classes, coming in and doing non-touch lessons, they were excited to do it. So they kept doing it. So we're in my business planning head, I was thinking, well, this is going to be really slow. This is going to be really slow. I actually quickly hit a place where it was just like, I need to find other teachers tomorrow or even yesterday, because people love to dance and they wanted to do it. They wanted to be a part of it. So that piece has actually not been a problem.
Well, I mean, in the Caribbean, I mean, in the main, it's still basically like, for the majority of us, a hobby. We teach class probably on our weekends, maybe 3 times a week. Describe to me a typical day in your studio, how that would be.
So yeah, there's like several typical days here. So a typical day for me as a studio owner is that I get in at anywhere from 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the morning, and I do all of my paperwork, all of my recording lessons, recording enrollments and group classes, and in the system that we use, we have to like post everything. So I do all of that from 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the morning till about 12:45. At 12:45, I take a break and I get some coffee, and then I start teaching from 1 o'clock. And my teaching day usually starts 1 o'clock and ends at 8:45 in the evening. So occasionally I would get a break in there, like a 45-minute break if somebody cancel a lesson, but I'm pretty much teaching. For a teacher, like one of my staff members, their day starts at 12:15. So they come in at 12:15, they have a staff meeting, and then they start teaching 1 o'clock until 8:45 as well.
That's every day?
That is Monday through Friday. And right now, Saturdays we are closed because I decided that I want a 2-day weekend.
Okay, all right. And how large is your studio in terms of students? You don't mind sharing?
No, let me see. So I myself, I would say that I have roughly 14 students. And then the other teacher has just about the same, but half of them are wedding couples. So that's also a big part of the market here. Everybody getting a first dance choreograph. So she teaches a lot of wedding couples. But here, the idea is not necessarily how many students you have, but more so how many lessons you're teaching. So I have roughly 15 students, but I teach about 35 lessons a week because most of those students take multiple lessons a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the age groups that you have?
The average age of a student here is probably 45 as an average. Most of them are over 50. Like the youngest student, if I go age range, the youngest student I have just turned 21, and the oldest student I have is about to be 83. Yeah. But most of them fit in that 50 to 67-ish age category.
You don't have much competitive dancers? You train people for competition? You do that?
So competition is a huge part of what we do, and it's also a very different mentality to competition in the Caribbean, I would say, or in Barbados. I can't speak for the whole Caribbean. In the sense that competition here is dominantly pro-am. So I dance competition several times a year with all of these students, and we dance in all different levels. I also train amateur couples that dance on the collegiate circuit and on the amateur circuit around the US. But that's the small majority. The big majority is pro-am dancing. So we dance pro-am, we call the levels A, B, C, and D. And A is pretty much 21 to 35. B is 36 to 45. No, that's a lie. B is 36 to 55. C is 56 to 67. And D is 67 and older. And then they just created an S category for anybody over 80. And the heaviest division of competing here in the US is B and C. And we categorize them L and G, lady and gentleman. And so if you go to any competition, the competition itself that will have a first round is ladies B. And then ladies C will probably start from like a quarterfinal or something like that. So competition is a huge part of our industry and what we do here, just not a little bit more as a, not even, because actually some of these women are way more competitive than I ever was. So, yeah. Anything else? Anybody else? I could give you a couple more minutes.
How would you compare the market in Barbados to where you are in your little community? Like for example, okay, you were able to control a studio out there and it could work for you. I think very few of us in the Caribbean could live on that. What would you say is the reason for that? What would you feel is to give a reason? Have an experience with
Yeah, I mean, the most blunt reason is just financial ability, and the capabilities to you know, kind of put the investment into it. And I think what we push here is purpose. Why should you as a person decide that you should spend this money on dancing? And the bottom line is, or the real reason behind all of it is a lot to do with mental health and community and finding a place that you can escape from. Because a lot of people come to dance and they walk in the door saying, okay, I want to take dance lessons. But what we've understood is that, yes, you want to take dance lessons, but why? And understanding the why and being able to provide to that why for most people is what makes the market really thrive here. They're escaping from terrible jobs that they don't like, terrible bosses that they don't like, family problems, husband problems, wife problems, children problems. They just want a place that they can feel like they can take a break, they can relax and release and just move. A lot of it as well is exercise, just being able to do something physical and fun at the same time. Most people hate to go to the gym. If you do statistics on the USA, it is the most obese country in the world. And that is pretty much because of that. You know, people don't like to go to the gym and they eat a lot of fast food. So they'll try to figure out a place, something that they can do that they can get a good workout in and still feel like they're having fun. So being able to play to that as well, or not even play to it, but provide that space for them is also what makes the market.
The other basic thing would be that you have a bigger market out there. So,
yeah, way more people, yes.
That does help.
Yeah. Yes, that does help too. Yeah.
Kelly have a question.
Yeah. It looks like Kelly Henry has a question.
Kelly? We're not hearing you.
Well, stop me too. It's a question and a comment. I just want to say firstly, it hasn't been easy, but just to encourage you to continue to do it. And also the question, you know, since you would have reached the heights and the levels that you have reached, and your roots were here in Barbados, especially now. I mean, there are talks of like a virtual workshop. Can that happen where we can? You're telling us, and as you talk, you're describing dance moves. With a workshop, we can actually see you doing it. Not in any way to discredit the dance teachers that we have here, especially those on the Zoom, because they're qualified and they're excellent. All of them that I'm seeing, I've been to some of them and the teachers are great. But how can you get back to dancing here in Barbados?
That is a great question, Kelly. And to be quite honest, I am always ready and willing and 100% down to do a class, to do a workshop. Whenever I come home, I work with some of the kids that are home. So I am always down to, you know, to give back right now what I can, which is in my physical abilities. I have thoughts and it's a part of the conversation that I didn't really go down. But there's things that I have in my head that I would like to do, certain goals I would say that I would like to be able to do for my country and for the people that got me started and that guided me down this path, that are things that I am working on. When we get to that point, they will happen. But until we get to that point, I am always happy to teach a class, do a workshop, be a part of a seminar like this anytime. So you call me, text me, email me, and you just tell anybody and I will show up pretty much. One thing that you said that I didn't really get into, which is my roots as a Bajan, and the piece of me that I love the most and that I started to learn that most people here love the most is that I am from Barbados, is that I am a Bajan, is that when they look at me, in a line with all the others, whether they be studio owners, all the other competitive dancers, whatever, I will always stand out. And that's not to be conceited in any way whatsoever, but I will always stand out because of being a Bajan. There's very, very few Black ballroom dancers in this community in the US. And out of, if there's 15 to 20 of us, 20 might be a stretch. If there's 15 of us, 11 are Haitian, and the other 3 are Americans, or well, 2 Americans and a Canadian, and 1 Bajan. So there's that sense of pride that I've learned to put into everything that I do here, because if I'm 100% honest, Kenrick said it earlier, where there's the opportunity to help kids who might not know a road that they need to take, or who might be going down the wrong road. You're looking at one. And Uncle Livy and Auntie Betty, I'm always grateful to, because without the 2 of them doing what they did so well, I would not be here at all. So I am always willing to give back. Just ask the question and I will.
Is there any are there any competitions which are in the States, which are open, American style, international style, or is the technique too far apart for that to happen?
So when you say open American style or open, it's meaning that you can dance that one category but dance either style?
No, you have foxtrot and everybody does foxtrot from both backgrounds, or they have to be separated.
No, yeah, there is 100% separated.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the purpose, well, the main purpose is if they are running a competition, they're trying to make money off the competition. So if they do foxtrot and just mix the division, then that eliminates them being able to run 2 divisions, which is getting 2 sets of money versus
Right.
1. That's, yeah. Then the other thing is international foxtrot, we all know, is closed position. You are in closed hole the entire time. You are not breaking that frame no matter what. American foxtrot, you don't ever have to get in that frame. Well, bronze and silver, yes, you do. But open level, you don't ever have to get in that frame. You dance the same feather step, you dance the same 3-step, you do all the same basic foot actions, but you do it in open positions, and you've got all your austere styling and your fussy styling and all your different things on top of it. So it could be a little bit chaotic, because the last thing you want to be doing is doing a 3-step feather step in closed hole, and then somebody doing a 3-step feather step with a roundhouse kick next to your head or something like that. So there's also that idea. The Latin and the rhythm, I can't give you an excuse for that, because it's the same thing, but they still keep it separated.
Hi, Kemar, this is Mark. Just
Hi, Mark.
Along the same lines of competition. In terms of like contingents from anywhere in the Caribbean, doesn't matter, going to America to compete. How do we go about doing that? How do we link ties with, well, you, because you know, studio owner and everything. How do we link ties with that so that we can have some sort of link from anywhere in the Caribbean to Boston to do competitions, or to anywhere in America, especially on the eastern side? Could that be a little easier to do competitions?
Yeah, so we pretty much just have to have the conversation, and the conversation just has to be about who wants to do it, when they want to do it, and there's really limitless opportunities that will allow you to do it. And then we talk about how do we get the funding to do it. That's really what it is. The competitions are expensive, in the sense that you are paying per dance versus per division. And then there's like the competition registration fee and things like that, but it's not possible. One of the reasons that I personally decided to buy a studio within the Fred Astaire franchise versus just open my own independent studio disattached to a franchise is because Fred Astaire is this huge entity in ballroom dancing in America that could very well, once I really get my feet sunk in as a studio owner, help me provide more of those opportunities to the Caribbean. Bring a competition to the Caribbean so that they are now inviting everybody in the competition to come to the competitions in the US and things like that. And it's very possibly done. I have a South African friend who has a Fred Astaire, and that venture is already being taken. So it's very possible. We just again have the conversation about it, and more than talk about it, just put pen to paper, make it happen. And I'm willing to do whatever I can to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
While we're waiting for finances and for COVID to disappear, in inverted commas, I'm not sure how many international style couples you have, but there may be a possibility for when we have competitions down here that are open up that you all probably can join us. Olivia would know the possibility of that better than me.
Yeah, I mean, every single student that I have, they literally ask every time, when are we going to Barbados to dance? When are we going to Barbados? And yes, for them is a lot less about the dancing and modification, but they will be ready to do it. So yeah.
The other possibility, we got, oh, the other possibility would be to have a show if they can afford to come down. Of course, this is in the future when travel is better and all sort of strange things, but that is something that you could think about. You know, the competition is one thing, and the show is easier.
Yeah.
You know? Right.
Yeah. The show is definitely. It is easier in the sense because, like I said earlier, the students that I teach is dominantly pro-am. So what that means is that it's me dancing with each one of them. Yes, there are a few of the amateur couples that will probably want to come as well, but it's a lot less of them than it is the pro-am couples. So the pro-am couples will definitely want to do it. I can go outside and ask one of them right now and see.
Margaret has a question.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say, Kemar, it really warms our hearts to know that you've come through the ropes and then come this far, regardless of all the challenges that you've received. You've remained steadfast and you're seeing the fruits, you know, of you're being firm, you know, in this cause. My question, I'm not sure if it's one that has been asked before, but when you think of the cost in relation to how it is here, I'm not sure how your rates would go, but if you had to compare it, what would be your thoughts? If you could share that, or pretty much like how it is done.
So I'll answer pretty much based on what you asked. Cost-wise, from what I experienced, and granted, I experienced two very generous people who did not run me down to pay dues, because I very not often pay dues. Sorry, Uncle Livy. But the cost is, I think there's a huge difference. So the cost is significant. Is there's a massive difference between it, you know. Fortunately here, people pay it, you know, they pay it because they want to do it. And in Tony's instance, they pay it because he's Tony Giovanni. He's been on TV for so many years. So everybody wants to take a picture with him more so than actually dance with him. So if that answers your question. The group classes, on the other hand, could kind of be comparable. So we charge $30 per person per group class, and the group classes are 45 minutes long as well. Some studios charge a little bit less, but they charge more for their private lessons, and some studios charge more for their private lessons and more for their group classes. What we do in Fred Astaire Belmont, or what I do, is that I have a unit system. So any student that is taking private lessons, on the week that you take a private lesson, you have unlimited group classes. So we offer 10 group classes a week, and you can come to all 10 of those group classes if you want to. And then every other Friday, we have a practice party, which is a social party that, again, on that week, you took a private lesson, you can come to that party free of charge. If you didn't take a lesson, then the cover for the party is $20.
So I have another question then. I mean, thank you for that answer.
Yes.
So I can understand how you were able to create your community. And that's awesome. So my next question then is that then, because of the race, does that mean that only a certain demographic, people of a certain status, would be the ones that you would see in Ballroom? Whereas here in Barbados, is we try to open it to anyone?
Yeah, the blunt answer is yes. Most of the people that do it are the people that, to them, not all, but most of them, to them, that is disposable income. It is something that they're using for fun and for leisure. But we do have the lot that they save to take the lessons, and we work on you could either pay per lesson, or we give you a discount if you buy a bigger package of lesson. We actually have a private lesson going on right now. You can see the couple right now. She's teaching this kid who he came into the studio in January to do his beginner lessons, and he could only afford to do that. So he said, you know what, I'll be back in 3 months to do another set. And he went and worked, and he came back to do another set. But he is autistic, so we give him an additional discount on top of his lessons to be able to do it.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best always, huh?
Thank you, Margaret.
Good evening.
Hi, Leon.
I'm here late, but I was out at another meeting. On a related topic, what are in related to demographics, do you find that you have lots of younger people? What is the future like for dancing in your area?
I mean, the future is great. There's lots and lots and lots of kids who are taking the lessons, and I will be 100% honest and say that my studio is not one of them, because I'm a patient person, but not that patient. I would not want to deal with me as a 12-year-old, so we don't teach the kids programs here because I don't have a teacher that wants to do it right now. But there are many studios in here, like in Boston, for instance, there's at least 12 studios around us, and most of them have fully functioning children programs that they have at least 10 to 15, some 20 students in the program. So the question of what the future looks like though is still iffy, because there is still that concept of burnout and how some of the kids are trained. And what you find is that there is a huge drop off when they hit teenage age and they're no longer forced to do it by their parents, you know, and some of them continue, but most of them drop off. And believe it or not, it's actually the girls that drop off and the guys continue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Randy, have a
Randy?
question?
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Now that you spoke about the person with autism, right? That's very interesting and intriguing. Do you find that persons with other disabilities take the classes? And well, I know that it helps with various disabilities, period, at dancing, right? But how do you find the uptake for that?
It is much bigger now. I have 2 students actually in wheelchairs. One of them born with a disability, and the other one got it while serving in the armed forces. But even beyond that, a lot of doctors here are now recommending or prescribing dance classes for various things, you know. So it is something that is helping with other disabilities, whether it be mental or physical, and the challenges that other people face with that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, I have time for one more question, then I have to go teach.
My question, if I could have the show, how did you, we talk about transition. How were you accepted among, as a young Black Barbadian? How were you accepted, or how did you feel accepted among where you are now?
Honestly, I felt there were lots of things that made me feel really, really good. And then there were some things that made me feel not so good. So so I'll just share this story. There's a thing of being a young, attractive Black man that can put you in a situation that makes you feel not so comfortable. And it's almost like you are being, what's the word? Fetishized, if that's the word. That is not very comfortable at all. But from the perspective of dancing, and again, I should be clear, that situation is very, 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 very slim. It has happened maybe 3 times. But from the perspective of dancing, I feel pretty celebrated, actually. And a lot of coaches that I work with and a lot of people that I go to for information for myself, one of the first things that they say to me is, okay, I am going to teach you X, Y, and Z. But when I teach you X, Y, and Z, I don't want to lose Kemar from Barbados. I want you to take this to help grow whatever you're doing, but I still want to see Kemar from Barbados, you know? So there's a celebration that I feel being a young Black man from the Caribbean.
So I assume quickly that racism is not a problem, you're saying?
Oh, I did not say that.
I'm asking.
That is a wormhole, Leon, that I will jump to the far left of right now. But that is it. I will say that within my community, I don't think that people understand when they're being racist. And fortunately, when I say something, they hear it versus combat it, which tells me that people want that I have encountered so far, that they want to learn and they want to grow with that regard, versus just being stuck in their way. But there are some people that don't know, or that I am going to choose to believe that they don't know that they are racist. That's just the truth.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. Sorry, you can keep talking. I'm just gonna start walking at the
Thanks
same
very
time.
much. Your discussion, lecture was very informative, and I do appreciate the young Black man from Barbados carrying the Barbadian flag very high. And as everything goes, we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Whenever, as we were saying, we saw you from a youth coming up, and you have made us very, very, very proud. Maybe Betty could take a bow, and all those others who will have helped you along the way. I want to also thank all of our Caribbean persons who have joined us this evening. As Betty said, this webinar is supposed to be a monthly endeavor put on by the Barbados Dance Council. And Kemar, feel free any time to join us. So by that, all the rest of the audience, we want to say thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again in our next webinar. Thanks very much.
Thank you guys very, very much for having me. And I want to introduce you to somebody. I'm going to put her on the spot right now, so she's probably going to cuss me. But this is one of my students, Linda. And Linda can answer that question of when are we getting to see a show in Barbados?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
For it.
Yes. So I'm thanking Linda too, because we cut into her lesson somewhat. So thank you guys for having me, and I definitely will love to be back again. And again, any questions you have, any information you want, anything you want to set up, email me, get my number from anybody. I am always 100% willing and happy to help. Anything I could do, I can do it. Not be Superman, but
thank you very much for sharing with us. And you keep safe over there, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Kemar.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.